Hey there, I know you're on a journey from grief to growth, just like I am, and you may be looking for tools to help you live a more soul-aligned life. Well, head over to my Grief to Growth store. It's your one-stop shop for inspiration, for healing, and for transformation. Inside there, you're going to find some free resources to help you get started. You'll find guided meditations to calm your mind and reconnect with your spirit. You'll find signed copies of my book, Gems of Healing. You'll find my brand new Oracle deck to help you tap into daily divine guidance. And there's some powerful mini courses designed to fit in your busy life and move you forward one gentle step at a time. So whether you're deep in grief, seeking spiritual growth, or just ready for a reset, there's something waiting for you right now. Just go to grieftogrowth.com/store, grief2growth.com/store, and start exploring. Close your eyes and imagine. What if the things in life that cause us the greatest pain, the things that bring us grief, are challenges? Challenges designed to help us grow, to ultimately become what we were always meant to be. We feel like we've been buried, but what if, like a seed, we've been planted? And having been planted, we grow to become a mighty tree. Now, open your eyes. Open your eyes to this way of viewing life. Come with me as we explore your true, infinite, eternal nature. This is Grief to Growth, and I am your host, Brian Smith. Hi there, I'm Brian Smith, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Grief to Growth. And whether this is your very first time joining us or you've been with us for a while, I am truly grateful that you're here. This is a space where we navigate the toughest parts of life. We talk about grief, we talk about loss, and everything in between, while we're also exploring the big questions. Who are we? Why are we here? What happens next? Today's conversation is one that touches the heart in a deeply personal way. We're talking about legacy. We're talking about what it means to remember, to honor, and to carry the essence of those we've lost forward into our everyday lives. My guest is Deb Strebel. She's the founder of Lee Alexander and Company, a custom jewelry company inspired by the memory of her beloved brother Lee. Deb's story begins with the tragic loss of her brother Lee, an experience that shaped not only her grief journey, but her entire identity. From the ashes of heartbreak, she created something beautiful, a way for others to wear their stories, to carry memories, and express love through intentional, handcrafted jewelry. In this episode, we're going to explore what makes sibling loss a unique form of grief, how Deb processed that loss over time, and how she chose to honor her brother by naming her business after him. We'll talk about how creating and wearing custom jewelry became a path to healing, and how these tangible pieces can serve as powerful reminders of the people that we've loved and lost. We'll also dive into what legacy truly means. Is it what we leave behind, or is it what we continue to carry and to create? So whether you're navigating a personal loss, supporting someone who is, or simply interested in how creativity and remembrance intertwine, I think you're going to find deep meaning in today's conversation. And as always, I invite you to continue the conversation at my Substack at grieftogrowth.substack.com, where I'll be sharing an article about this episode. And I'd love to hear your reflections, your stories, and how you honor the legacies of those you love. And with that, I want to welcome Deb Strebel.
Hi, Brian. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, Deb. And whenever I'm talking to someone who has a loved one who has passed on, the first thing I want to do is honor that person. So tell me about your brother, Lee.
I would love to. And also thank you for that beautiful introduction. That was lovely. I couldn't have said it better myself. So my story starts about 20 years ago next year. I grew up in a very, I guess, conventional, in what a lot of people would think is a conventional family. My parents are have a lovely, wonderful, and loving relationship. I have one brother who was a little over 3 years younger than me, and family was like really big growing up. My mom always made sure that we had dinner together every night and that we had a family day every Sunday. So we grew up very close. Him and I fought a lot as kids. I was not the older sister looking back, but we also had a very close bond. We had a lot of similar interests. So we did spend a lot of time together, whether or not that was our choice. And then as we got older, we definitely became closer, and our interests merged a little bit. We definitely stopped bickering. Uh, and then I turned 18 and I was going to college locally. So I moved into an apartment in town. And we still, saw each other on a regular basis and kept in touch. He would have been about 15. And then um, I I was I was snowboarding for my gym credit in
Mm.
college, and it was a terrible day outside. And I so we ended up leaving the slopes and going back to the college, and I was in the library, and I remember at one point having this like crazy chill come over me that I've
Mm.
never experienced since, um, or before that. And I said to my friend, like, did it get like super cold in here? And she was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, all right, like that was really weird. I'm
Mm.
like to my core freezing. And then I sort of moved on. And about an hour later, I went outside and I had a voicemail, and it was a message from the police. And they said, come to the hospital. Something happened
Mm.
to your brother, and your dad wants you to be there. And I was like, oh my God, like I can think of no other, I can think of no other outcome than he has died.
Mm.
So we speed to the hospital. We pass our high school where he was a no, sophomore, and there's an ambulance out front. And I was like, I don't know what that means, but I'm convinced he's dead.
Wow.
Um, and we arrive at the hospital. I go to the desk. I'm like trying to talk to them. And I remember looking to my right and I see my dad like through a door in this like little window in the door, and I see his face. And, that kind of confirmed everything. So um, it was completely shocking.
Mm.
He was in class, he was in a theater class, and he just dropped.
Wow.
And it ended up being something called myocarditis, which is a virus of his heart. So just a virus that made its way to his heart. And otherwise, he was a perfectly healthy teenager. And that changed my life forever.
Absolutely. I'm so sorry for that. So it's actually really it reminds me of kind of my daughter's story. My daughter Shayna was 15 when she passed, and it was a sudden thing. And my other daughter Kayla is 3 years older, so they were 18 and 15.
Hmm.
So you're I can't even imagine the shock. And you said it's interesting. You said you had this idea that he was dead, but at 18 and 15, had you ever even had a thought like that before?
No, I had never had a thought like that. I think it was just the idea that it was the police who called me.
Yeah.
Um, and I may have called them back actually, now that I think about it. I think I called the number back and they wouldn't give me any information.
Mm.
Um, my mom was in California on a
Mm.
business trip that she had just arrived in Huntington. So she got this, terrible phone call and had to come home. Um, yeah, I don't know why I knew. I have no idea why that was my thought. I had never experienced anything like that before. I don't think I've
Yeah.
been to a funeral.
Yeah. Again, I can't. At 18, my daughter was 18. She was actually Kayla was on vacation, so she was in South Carolina with friends when it happened. So I had to make the phone call to her, and she had to fly back home. So I'm seeing a lot of parallels here.
Yeah.
The thing is, I've experienced the loss of a daughter, and I've talked to a lot of people who have experienced the loss of a spouse or a parent. There's something I think different about sibling loss. So describe what that was like for you.
Um, so, in the aftermath, it was everyone shows up, right? And you have like all of these people that you know and love that are trying to help in the next few days until the service. But then after the service happens, everyone leaves.
Yeah.
And my parents, like, there was so much support for my parents, because this was just so crazy. And Lee was involved in the community a lot. He was in in improv class, and he was in the school production. I think there was a production in process at the time that he was a part of. He had so many friends. We have huge, wonderful families. Like, um, there was a lot of hoopla
Yeah.
going on. And then everyone left. And my parents had this wonderful, support of their friends. But I remember we went to this, there was some sort of memorial ceremony that was held locally. I'm not sure what the context of it was, looking back, so much as a blur.
Hmm.
But my parents were being talked about. My brother was being talked about. The experience was being talked about, but they definitely left out the fact that he had a sibling. And I
Right.
remember sitting at the table by myself because my parents were being honored somewhere like up towards the front of like a stage sort of thing. And
Hmm.
sitting there like, oh my gosh, like I I feel so invisible. Um, I had been so deeply affected by this, not just because I lost Lee, which is huge.
Hmm.
Um, but I also like didn't realize that you could just drop dead. Um, and so I'm questioning everything.
Hmm.
Um, and it really it changed every piece of me, physically, mentally, emotionally. Um, and and it was really hard because I did feel a bit alone, I think, in comparison. My parents were amazing. They were incredibly supportive. They, tried to put me into grief therapy and all of this stuff. Um, but I don't know, it was this unique feeling. And other people who shared this, because I did know a few other people who did lose a sibling, they had other siblings. And I think that's so helpful. Like, I
Yeah.
found myself like, why did my parents just have two kids? If I had another person here,
Mhm.
they would understand what I'm going through, but I'm
Yeah.
just alone. I'm an only child now. Um, and my parents, who obviously also didn't know that this was something they needed to be worried about, turned their attention to me and then were constantly terrified that something would happen to me. And so I kept thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Not just for my own sake, but if something happens to me, then like, what about my parents? Um, and so it was like this crazy dynamic that developed early on where I felt huge pressure, and also fear.
Right. Yeah,
So,
that thought that comes in your mind that, anything can happen at any time, I can imagine becomes a very pervasive thought. And, when you talked about being an only child, I remember my daughter Kayla said that, and it just broke my heart when she said, now I'm an only child. So there's that, as you said, it changes everything about like who you are. You go from being a big sister to being an only child. And as a parent, you want to be there for your child that's still here, but we get so we want to honor the one that the passed too, right? So that we want to, like in our house, we put pictures up and stuff. So did you experience that where your parents were like putting a lot of attention into Lee after he passed?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
I'm excited to announce I have a great new resource. It's called GEMS, 4 Steps to Move from Grief to Joy. And what it is, it's 4 things that I've found that I do on a daily basis to help me to navigate my grief. And I'm offering it to you free of charge. It's a free download. Just go to my website, www.grieftogrowth.com/gems, GEMS, and grab it there for free. I hope you enjoy it.
I'm not sure. Um, I don't think when I look back, that's not necessarily a feeling that I identify with. I didn't feel like um they didn't add photos. We had so many family photos around. They really didn't turn their attention to that. I think
Mm-hmm.
um they were, I think it was almost the opposite. And
Mm.
they honored him. I mean, they went to therapy immediately, all kinds of therapy in our family at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm very grateful at how they handled it. Really, when I look back, that's not feeling neglected by them or overlooked by them is not a feeling that I recall, which is great. So
Yeah.
I feel like they did a very good job of like balancing how we moved forward.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hard thing, and that's a great thing that your parents were, able to do that. 'Cause sometimes, it's not intentional, but people will just, again, spend so much time and effort on the one that's gone, and sometimes the one that's left feels a little bit, invisible. But you talked about, I guess, maybe the people around you, like they kind of tended to help your parents, and so that feeling. So when you went, I'm just curious, when you went back to college, what was that like for you? That experience of going back and telling people what had happened, and
I went to school. I started at a community college for what was going to be 2 years and then was going to transfer.
Mhm.
Um, and so I didn't have to tell a lot of people because we're a smaller community and a lot of people knew. So I luckily did not have
Okay.
to share that information. They
Yeah.
already knew. My guidance counselor at my community college was a longtime family friend. And so, he helped handle things at my school. I ended up having to go for um, an extra semester, if I can recall, um, or I guess dropping for that semester, which
Hmm.
meant I went for an extra year at the other. I transferred to another college. But I tried to continue with school, which was kind of crazy. I took like a brief bereavement period and then was like, I can do this. But no, no. I mean, it was kind of a nightmare when I look back at like the pain and anxiety. I was just mentally just messed up.
Yeah.
Um, and so I definitely needed extra time uh, to figure that out. But I did have a lot of people around me who knew what happened. I think it was that a lot of them didn't know what to say and
Hmm.
they didn't know how to react, which I understand because even now, when someone around me loses somebody, it's just every situation's so different. Every situation, even if there's like so many parallels,
Yeah.
everyone grieves so differently. And so I understand that there's no right thing to say other than I'm so sorry. Can I bring you food?
Yeah.
Can I sit with you? Um, but I definitely felt from, I guess a community standpoint or something, like everybody was like, how are your parents? How are your parents?
Right.
And I was like, well, they're struggling. I'm struggling too.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Again, I just, as I look at you, I see my daughter, and I remember she was a freshman in college, and my Shayna passed the year between her freshman year and her sophomore year, and we were like, well, maybe take a year off, just stay home for a while. But she was just turning 18, actually. When Shayna passed, I guess she was 18. Um, she was like, I want to go back to school. I just want to be normal. But she didn't want to tell the kids at her school, and she went to school 3 hours away. But she was like, I don't want to be the girl with the dead sister, was the way that she put it. And this was 10 years ago, so it's completely different now. But I think sometimes kids want to just like, I want to just go back to quote normal as soon as possible. And as adults, we have to understand that, at 18, you grieve differently than we do at the ages that some of us are.
Absolutely. Yeah. 18-year-old Deb was a completely different person. Although, I think a lot of that is attributed to what happened.
Hmm.
I didn't mind talking about it. I mean, I wanted to keep his memory alive. I felt like this was good information for people to know about me because again, I was I was unpredictably different
Hmm. Yeah.
than before.
Right.
Um, uh, I didn't know what that meant. I just knew that I was a different person at that point, and I didn't mind sharing this story. I mean, it's such a shocking story. Sometimes I would find myself telling this story and go, is it me? Is this my story? Because why? Like, how did this happen? I had this just such a traditional upbringing, and I
Mm-hmm.
hadn't had a lot of obstacles at that point of, just very average in every way.
Yeah.
And this was not average. This was just this curveball that I just didn't know could be thrown. So I didn't mind that other people knew this.
Yeah, that's the thing, it comes in out of the blue, and it's one of those things you think happens to other people. We know that it happens, but it doesn't happen, in our household. So
Right.
that lack of feeling of safety. So how have you navigated that feeling like you said, the responsibility, your parents, maybe a little bit of hypervigilance, which we went through with my daughter, Kayla. So, how did you guys go through that?
Well, I looking back, it's really interesting because on one hand, I felt this like immense pressure to make sure I was very safe. And so anytime I was in a car with somebody, I was like, remember, like my mom would text me and be like, tell them that they have precious cargo. So, I would be like, listen, you have a big responsibility. Please don't kill us. And I'm 18. So, every time your 18-year-old is on the road, it's terrifying.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I, I feel like on one hand, there was recklessness in a way, which is weird, but I was like, not to a point where I felt like I was in danger. I don't look back and think like, oh, that was a really dangerous situation, other than like driving too fast or trusting a couple people that I maybe shouldn't have trusted. I
Hmm.
didn't go on like some sort of like really reckless um uh binge of, partying or anything like that.
Hmm.
But I was like really wanting to maintain um a normal experience. I had been so looking forward to college. I really had a wonderful high school experience, and I just wanted to be normal while balancing the fact that my parents were like so worried about me. They couldn't get in contact with me. They were very nervous. I remember one time I was at a party around the block from my parents' house,
Hmm.
and something happened. Oh, I had a bunch of missed calls, and I finally was able to answer these calls. And it was that a police officer showed up at my parents' house, and my mom immediately thought that I died.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, and so, but all it was is that some on the block there was a break-in, or there was something was called in, and the police were just checking to see if everything's okay. But I remember my mom like absolutely broke down and couldn't get a hold of me, and I felt so guilty that she couldn't immediately get a hold of me to
Yeah.
say like, no, I'm fine. I'm just at this person's house over here. Um, and so that was terrible. Um, but I don't remember it lasting too incredibly long, that stage. Um, I remember like, again, therapy for us was so helpful.
Mm.
We all went to different therapies. My mom tried to do like family therapy together and separately. I did not find that helpful. And I don't think it was the grief therapy itself. I think it was the therapist wasn't a good match for me. I
Mm.
remember her telling me like, sometimes you'll cry, sometimes I'll cry, and sometimes we'll cry together. And I was like, I can't deal with you crying. That is not going to work for me. And so I
Yeah.
was like, this isn't going to work. And then, but I had this trauma where I started having panic attacks.
Mm.
Um, I started having panic attacks. Just I was convinced that I was going to drop dead. I mean, and statistics meant nothing, right? So people would be like, the likelihood of X, Y, Z, and I'm like, the likelihood means nothing, because what's the likelihood of a perfectly healthy 15-year-old
Right.
just dying?
Right.
Um, so I don't subscribe to that thought process, and now I'm afraid that like the most unthinkable thing will happen at any time.
Mm.
So I ended up going to, a different therapist, and I had EMDR, which is uh, eye movement rapid. No, um, I don't remember what it stands for.
I,
EMDR
yeah,
was
EMDR.
incredibly
Yeah.
helpful.
I move it to desensitization, I think, something. Yeah.
Yes, something like that. And I will say, like, it helped me so much because every time I thought about seeing my dad in the window at the hospital, I just couldn't.
Yeah.
It took me out of wherever I was and just put me into a panic state.
Right.
So I used EMDR with a different with a different kind of therapist, a regular therapist that I had started seeing, and it helped right away. I mean, I could then have that thought without breaking down,
Right.
which was a huge relief. My dad also was traumatized because he was the first one at the hospital and he was with my brother. I actually did not see my brother. I was asked, like, do you want to see him one last time? And I said, I don't.
Mm.
Um, I want to remember him as I do. And the idea of seeing him not alive anymore was just too much. And I don't regret that. I feel, I don't feel like that would have, I don't know what would have happened if I did make that decision, but I feel okay with it.
Yeah.
Um, and and I feel like I changed so much after all of that happened. Prior to him passing, I feel like, I'm a millennial. We watched a lot of teen movies, which were, had a kind of a formulaic approach where, there's high school and there's cliques and there's the cool kids and there's the not cool kids and there's the importance of being cool. And I think that having friends and being seen as like a cool person, it was a very high priority for me over success in school. I had a wonderful family, but I don't know that I ever realized how lucky I was to have that family. And I don't think I was grateful to have that family. I was just like, whatever, cool. Like, of course I have this family. It's again, what you see portrayed in movies and I was very average in a lot of these areas.
Mm-hmm.
And after he passed, I became so much more family. I think after I had the therapy, after I really worked on myself, after the initial grief period, because I'm not sure that anyone can really become this enlightened person right after something like that happens.
Right.
It was like a very long period of time where I had to work through some crazy things, and my body like revolted. I had health problems pop up. I had no idea that could happen, that like a trauma or a death could then affect your health that way.
Mm-hmm.
It was just all over the place. But, a couple of years later, I found that I had completely reprioritized everything.
Mm.
My relationship with my parents, I feel, was so much better. My mom and I used to butt heads like crazy. I'm a very hard-headed, strong-willed individual. And I'm not someone who enjoys taking no for an answer, especially when I was a teenager.
Sure.
So after Lee's passing, knowing that your whole world can just end at any time, on one hand was this curse that I had to figure out how to navigate, because nobody could say like it's not true. No one could say like no, nothing's going to happen. That's just not something that exists. The only thing you can do is think, well, it's not likely to happen, so worrying about it's not going to do anything. And like, how can you prepare yourself, or how can you live your life in a way that says like, okay, anything can happen at any time? So my relationship with my parents became incredible. And I made sure that every time I spoke to any loved one, friend, family, whatever, I was very clear about my feelings with them, in a loving way.
Yeah.
Because I pictured, every conversation could be the last conversation. And it changed everything. It changed everything about me.
So, in terms of your parents' relationship with each other, without getting too personal, it's a myth that when parents lose a child, that it drives them apart, and some people think the divorce rate is like 80% or something for parents to lose a child. Again, that's a myth. So, I want to put that to rest. But how would you say your parents' relationship? It sounds like your relationship with your parents improved What was your perception of their relationship with each other?
I had heard about that myth and I didn't know it was a myth. So I was terrified.
Sure.
And when I was around them, if they would be, if they argued with each other, I did find that I felt like they were arguing more. I didn't live at home either. So I
Hmm.
wasn't with them all the time, but I did feel like they were arguing more. And maybe that was just my perception because I was so sensitive to it.
Yeah.
Not that they argued a lot and they didn't have an unhealthy way of communicating necessarily, but I was terrified that they were going to get divorced. I remember on a road trip one time, my parents were arguing, and my dad got out to get gas, and it came up like somehow my mom was like, she like knew. I don't know if I voiced my fear, but my mom was like, we're okay. Like we're not going to break up, and she might have said it's a myth, because I
Yeah.
think I was very scared.
Yeah. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear that comes up with this, and the worst thing we can think of that could never happen happens. Like you said, it kind of takes you can throw the rule book out the window, right? Yeah, I could just drop dead at any moment. I used to have panic attacks when I was young. And one of the things I would tell myself was, well, I'm too young to actually die. But when you see somebody 15, I'm sure you know this now, it's not as unheard of as people think it is. My daughter was 15 when she passed away. I've heard of kids in their kitchen at the age of 10 that just suddenly pass away. And unfortunately, it's a reality of life, which doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem right, but it does happen. And when it does, we have to change everything we think about the world.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy.
So you went ahead and finished school, and then you had a career after that. What did you do after that? What's your major?
So this is an interesting tidbit. So my parents are they have or they had a wealth management firm. So they did financial planning, investments, insurance. They have had clients for, I mean, well over 30 years. Um, work with them.
Hmm.
They, try to make sure that everyone, that their clients have this like amazing um, plan in
Hmm.
every aspect that they've like, accounted for, and they work with them throughout their lives until retirement. And they were great at it. They love their clients. They are very well educated around these subjects. They kept up with the education, and they really cared about the people they were working with. And it was my dad's dream for me to do this.
Mm.
So I worked at their firm on and off when I was a kid. I would like have a little after school job. And then I would say, I don't want to do this. And my dad's like, well, you're not doing what I do. You're filing. And filing is terrible. And I'd be like, okay. And, that kept happening through life where he's like, you would be a great financial planner. You're really great with people and you're passionate and you care. And all of those things made sense to me. So I'd be like, okay, okay. But then I would like think about it more and be like, but I don't really like money. I don't like thinking about money. I don't want to have that piece, which is a really important piece to understand the ins and outs of the technical side of like insurance and wealth management and all of that stuff. It's really important. And I couldn't stand it. So, and then later in high school, my dad said, I will very much help pay for college if you go for financial planning. And I was like, oh man, I want to go into advertising or something. Um, and but I was like, you know what, fine, I'll do it. And college, I had a great college experience. It was after high school that I sort of learned how to learn. Um, which doing your homework really important, it turns out. So
Mm.
um, I became a much better student. I graduated with a business degree with a big focus in financial planning. That's like I think part of the degree program. That was my major.
Hmm.
Um, did internships at several different firms that were not my parents' firm. Um, but while I was in high school or college, I'm sorry, the 2008 crash happened.
Mm,
And I had been interning for that summer at my parents' firm. So I saw the worst of the worst. It was
mm,
probably my dad's worst nightmare, not just that this happened because of all the, the way that his clients were reacting and the way that, I mean, I'm sure every financial advisor and every person who has money in the market was just freaking out.
yeah.
Um, so I watched all this take place, and my dad must have been like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that she chose now to be an intern watching this nightmare."
Right.
Um, it was terrible. I think that really sealed it. Watching my parents just try to navigate this situation, I think they both became substantially more gray. And I was like, I could not handle this responsibility. I don't feel like this is what my passion is. Um, and I think that's when I was like, yeah, I don't think I want to do
Mm,
this. Um, and so I didn't really know what to do with myself. I mean, I did work at some financial services firms. I still pursued it just for a lack of not knowing what to do. And I thought maybe the passion would come after I fully understand the work.
hmm
Um, but it just never became something that I loved. Um, and it's so interesting when I look back. That my dad wanted me to do this family business. It was really important to him. They had built up this wonderful company, and he just wanted to be like,
Right.
here,
Right.
here is this great position. I will teach you everything. And I was like, I really don't want to do it. And simultaneously after Lee passed, um, my parents got an urn, but I was at college. And so the biggest thing for me was I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like, I have a sweatshirt of his, but like, I don't have a piece of him. I know he's in this urn, but it didn't compute in my brain. I felt like I wanted something with me. And that's when I found out about memorial jewelry. Excuse
hmm
me. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know about anything surrounding death.
hmm
And I found out about memorial jewelry that like really fit what I was looking for. But like I couldn't find anything I liked. It was all very inexpensive because it was made of like, it was silver, and there was a screw and a little place to put the ashes, and then you screw it closed.
hmm
Um, I didn't really like any of the designs, but again, the point was that I wanted him with me when I left for college, which I was a couple hours away when I transferred. So a bunch of us got pieces. My parents were like, "Oh, that's a good idea," and a bunch of us got these pieces. And I wore it a lot. Again, I didn't love how it looked, but it was really important to me to have him with me.
Sure.
But then I got into a hot tub one day, and next thing I know, the whole thing is just green. It is ruined.
Oh.
Um, and it's a screw. So there's no way that like water didn't get into it. And that was
hmm
devastating to me.
Mm,
So um, I had, I talked to my parents about it. Um, and we acknowledged like, okay, we want something long term. They're willing to pay for it because again, I was a college student. We went to a local jeweler and had pieces made for us. And okay, great. Like now I have something more substantial that I can feel comfortable with. Again, it wasn't completely what I wanted, but the concept was there. Now I didn't have to worry about something terrible happening to it.
hmm
And at some point we were like, there must be other people who want something that'll last a really long time and that they actually like really love the design of and they feel really connected with. Um, and so my parents decided to start, well, we decided, but I was at college and I didn't have any ability to like really work with them at the time, but they started this group with a designer and a couple other people who helped start this business.
Hmm.
And so it became sort of like, oh, maybe I can do something with this. Maybe I don't have to do financial planning and I can still be part of a family business.
Mm.
I can work for this jewelry company. That was, kind of my brainchild in the first place anyway. And I was passionate about the idea. And what's funny is that I immediately regretted it.
Oh.
Before we had ever made a sale, we were sort of like, okay, what do we have to do to make this business known? how do we get our first customer? Well, blogs were starting to be a thing. This is like back in, I don't know, 2014 or 15 when I kind of joined into what they were doing. And I found myself surrounded by death. So instead of like the responsibility of the financial planning side of things, where you have to be like responsible for people's well-being, really, if something terrible happens or you miscalculate something, like you could really mess up the future of someone. And that pressure seeed really immense. And then we go over here and I was like, oh my gosh, now I'm just thinking about death. Now I'm just completely thrown into the world of death. And I already am in the world of death. That is my brain after this happened. I was like, this isn't going to work. But I worked through that. And it turned out that I wasn't surrounded by death. In fact, I would say there was just once we had our, first couple of sales and I got the response from people about how just grateful and thankful they were to have something so beautiful and important, and how, I don't know, it just seemed to bring a lot of people some sort of closure, some sort of positive feeling in their journey. And I was like, that's it. I figured it out. That's what I want to do. And here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I understand what you're saying, because sometimes people ask me, like with what I do, they're like, doesn't that bring you down being around, people that are talking about death all day? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. Because it is that legacy that people, you've created a legacy, or you're creating a legacy with your brother Lee, and you're helping other people to create and preserve the legacies of their loved ones. So it's very, honorable work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. It feels like it. I didn't think so. I just didn't realize the impact. I knew how I felt. I have a ring now that, like, one of our original designs, when we haven't had a new designer, I actually was able to participate in the design process, which I wasn't able to do the second time, I guess, because not the first cheap piece, but the next piece. I didn't identify with it in terms of the style, but it was a better quality. But we went to another person who was able to really work with me one-on-one and create a design that, like, really spoke to me. I chose an aquamarine stone and this is funny, a lot of my customers, they focus a lot on birthstones, having some sort of meaning to the month that they were born or they died. And even if they don't like the color. And so I thought that was interesting, because I actually chose an aquamarine because my brother and I shared this unbelievable love of the water, of the ocean. And so it reminded me of him. It reminded me of us. And that's it. That's the only reason that I chose this. Yeah. So I encourage people, you don't need to pigeonhole yourself. The person that you're memorializing, if they're somewhere, because I have no idea, but if they're somewhere and they can see you, they want you to be happy. They want you to have something that makes you feel joy. And so if you find that the birthstone that matches their birthday isn't your style, don't feel like you have to do that or you're not honoring them appropriately. And I hope people realize that, because I think they do put a lot of stock into, connecting it to something like a birthstone. Not that there's anything wrong with doing that. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, and many people are happy doing that.
Sure.
But I just want people to feel more empowered to, whatever brings them the most joy when remembering their loved one. I think that's the most important part of it. But having my own ring, there's something about having him on my finger. I don't know what it is, because I don't feel, I'm not a person that feels like if I don't have this with me, he's not with me. I don't feel like this is something that everyone needs to have in order to have their loved one with them. Like, however people desire to remember and to honor, it's such a personal experience. there's no right or wrong way. But I, I, I love it. I love that every time I look at my hand, I think of him. If I'm not, I mean, he's always there, but I think of
Mm-hmm.
him even more. I mean, he's like against my finger in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think about, it brings me luck. Like if I'm doing something important, I put it on my finger and I'm like, be with me and help me navigate this thing that I have
Mm-hmm.
to do. Um, and I don't know, it's a feeling of closeness that I can't describe that was so important for me to achieve. And having it is so special. Um, and so I want anyone looking for that to feel that way too.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. I think we all want to find ways to carry our loved ones with us in a sense. And I remember when my daughter passed, we were like, you have that choice between cremation and burial. And some people choose burial. We chose cremation because one of the things I did not want to be tied to a physical location.
Hmm.
If we ever decided to move or whatever, it's like that was our decision, right?
Hmm.
And so we have pictures, we have other things we can do, but having a piece of jewelry, as you said, it's not them, but it's a reminder of them. It's a token of them that you can have with you, constantly. I can see the appeal for that. So
Hmm.
we talked about, some of the shortcomings and some of the other jewelry you looked at and what you didn't like about it. Tell me about the process of working with Lee Alexander and Company. If I come to the website, how do I start? What's the process?
So we have a variety of designs that are ready to be purchased. Now they don't exist yet. So everything on our website is the design that you would get. But we make every piece to order. So we have people that come to our website and go, you know what, I love this piece. I love this necklace. It has these diamonds in it. That's what I want. And they can purchase. And then from there, we have a kit that we send to them with instructions, and we collect the littlest bit of ashes, to put inside because they're very small pieces. Um, they send it back to us with a label that we provide, and we, go to production. They At that point they can, or when they're purchasing, they can, personalize it with a little symbol. We have a symbol. Our logo is also an infinity symbol. So a lot of people really like that.
Hmm.
Um, or they can do initials, or they can do a different symbol. We have a lot of options because a lot of people memorialize pets, or there's something that uh, resonates with them that they want on that piece, and so
Hmm.
we can add that onto the design that we already have very easily. Um, and so the process is about 4 to 6 weeks. Sometimes we can do it a lot faster, depending. But it's usually within that time period.
Hmm.
Um, and so once we get the ashes back, we fill up the piece that we had in production while we were waiting for that kit to come back. And uh, we fill the little chamber. It's a small chamber within each piece. We fill to the top with the ashes, or pet hair, locks of hair, um, sand, earth, t-shirt, anything that brings somebody a feeling of closeness to their loved one.
Hmm.
Pretty much, we will accept and put into a piece of jewelry as long as
Hmm.
we can get it to be small enough. And then we seal it with a laser welder so that it is completely and totally sealed. You will need to um, have the intention to unseal it, and probably need help doing that. Like I couldn't do it. I don't think I could get this open.
Yeah.
I would need help. Um, and so when we finish, we send it back along with any of the material that's left. Um, we send it insured back to the customer. Um, if somebody went to our website and they were like, I like this piece, but I wish it was different, or beautiful pieces, but nothing that fits what I want. We work with customers all the time to either alter designs or create something completely new. Um, we we really want to accommodate.
Hmm.
And so as long as we feel confident in the strength of the piece, so as long as like, we really won't make something that we fear will fall apart. Unless it's insisted upon. Like we are very clear, like this design, we would do XYZ to make it stronger because
Hmm.
we want it to last for generations. We want our pieces to be passed down. Um, so that the person's legacy, their memory, they'll be talked about. It's a physical thing that, when I pass it down to my daughter someday, we'll talk about her Uncle Lee. And I mean, she'll know all about him, and just know that there's a little piece of him in here. So we make sure that we're very clear about, this is a piece we're confident in, or we're worried that this piece has some issues.
Hmm.
And sometimes customers are like, I want what I want, and that's fine with me, and I'll be careful. And we're like, okay. But typically, we can make some adjustments to make sure that it fits into that long-lasting category. But yeah, really, we can do almost anything.
Okay.
We can do almost anything. The sole purpose for us is to fit something super, super special permanently into a piece of jewelry. And so we only work with certain materials like platinum and 18 karat and 14 karat gold.
Hmm.
And then we can accept almost any stone as long as we can find it, and that it's not too soft.
Right.
Like a pearl in a ring might be something that's dangerous. It's a very soft stone. So we
Right.
help navigate how to find a stone that works, that will last for a long time, because we just really don't want anyone to find themselves in the position that we were in, where, your most important piece of an important piece of jewelry is broken. That
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's a much more emotional process if that were to happen with this kind of jewelry than anything else.
That's awesome. I love that. So, and remind me, how long has it been since your brother passed?
He passed in 2006. It's going to be 20 years next year,
Yeah.
February.
So, what do you mentioned earlier? You said you don't know where our loved ones are for sure. But what are your thoughts? What do you think Lee would think about where it is you are now, almost 20 years later, and how his legacy has been carried on?
That's a great question. I think he would be entertained by the fact that he is such a prominent part of my life. Just
Mm,
um, he was a very funny and sweet kid, um, and he was very sarcastic. And so I think he would be like, "I'm glad you found your passion, and I'm so honored that you're doing this for me. But I also, haha, I am." I'm so much a part of your life every day that you didn't think that would be the case. Um, but I I don't know. I imagine that if he's consciously around me somewhere, that he would be very honored and happy to see like us helping other people in this way.
yeah.
Um, yeah, he was very empathetic. Um, and I think he would just be happy that I found a lot of positive ways to deal with his departure, um, in helping people and in my own life and how I navigate my everyday. I think he'd really, um, I think he'd be happy about that.
Yeah, I think it's truly amazing. We think sometimes, of the impact where our lives are going to have. And we think, oh, my life is not going to have that much of an impact. And you think about a 15-year-old passing away in high school, and there's a lot of times there's a fear that people have that they're going to forget my loved one. People are going to forget. And I love this story because it shows that, you go back 19 years ago and nobody could have envisioned what your life was going to look like today. And I love your thinking about, Lee's like getting a kick out of it, right? Because I think I think that we do know that when we're on the other side, we do kind of have a plan, but on this side we have no clue. And it's just a great example of don't worry about your loved one being forgotten. Don't worry about you being forgotten. That you could have a bigger impact than you can even possibly imagine. And what you're doing now is having an impact on people. They're buying that jewelry. That's going to be a legacy in and of itself.
Mhm. Yeah, I I truly didn't realize, um, I think until really a few years ago, I didn't realize the impact, it was like it is a service and it is a special piece. But it wasn't until I started receiving these phone calls after people received their pieces. I would get these phone calls and I work very closely with my customers. So I think that's part of it. Like a lot of my customers I get to know pretty well. We are
Mhm.
communicating throughout the entire process. I'm checking in with them to make sure that like things look right. I'm giving them updates and they've often told me their story. So I know something very intimate about them.
Right.
Um, and so oftentimes like we do form somewhat of a relationship over, the time that they are a customer, especially if they're making a custom piece of jewelry, because that's a very um, in-depth process to
Mhm.
to have an idea in your head and not necessarily know how to communicate it. We work back and forth a lot to be like, is this right? Is this what you thought about? Um, and so on the other side of that, I'm anxiously waiting for them to receive the piece and to hear their thoughts, because the last thing I want is for someone to get their piece and go, oh, like this isn't, that's probably my biggest fear
Yeah.
in this business, is that they receive a piece and they're like, well, this isn't what I wanted. Which has happened twice.
Mm.
And when that happens, then my goal then is to go, okay, how do we fix it? And so we've taken both of those pieces back and gone, okay, let's rework this. Let's think about this again and see where we went wrong. Um, and then the um, I get so I get so much satisfaction when the second time around they're like, got it, this is
Yeah.
it, you did it, you figured it out, thank you for sticking with me, um, because I would hate, I want this experience in the world of darkness that they are in. I want to provide an experience that is light. I want to make sure that every step of the way is as easy as possible, and that on the other side of it, they are so happy that they did this, that they chose us for something so important.
Mm.
Um, I I I just want people to love us forever.
Yeah.
and um and so to get I didn't realize the impact necessarily. I knew this was a special thing.
Mhm.
Um but until I started receiving these calls in the last couple of years where my customers were just they sounded very sad. I will say that. They're crying. They're crying, and that's something that I didn't want to cause, but they're crying tears of gratitude,
Mm.
and they're just trying to express this, um that they never envisioned how great this would feel, like that it would partially fill this hole in their heart. They know I can't bring their loved one back. They know
Right.
that I can't change the circumstance, but this made them feel so much better and more relieved than they, I think, even realized when they began the process.
Mhm.
Um, and I began to live for that. So
Yeah.
anytime I meet a new customer, I'm like, that is my goal. My goal is to have you just be so incredibly happy on the other side. Obviously, I guess happy is a loaded word because every customer I have is going through something.
Mhm.
And even if they lost a loved one some time ago and they're just getting to memorialize them, because we have a lot of people who like could not think about doing something like this
Right.
immediately after they lost their loved one, or didn't know this existed, but they've always had these ashes somewhere and wanted to do something with them and found us eventually years later. I think it brings up old feelings. I think
Mhm.
it, kind of pushes them back um, into this feeling of grief. Um, but to have somebody call me and express this overwhelming gratitude about something that I've done. It's not an experience that I'd ever had before.
Yeah.
I've tried to be a good friend and, person in people's lives, be there for them when they're going through hard times, be a sounding board, but nothing I've ever done before this brought about that reaction. And I think I realized like this is what it's like when people say like, this is my calling.
Mm-hmm.
I never understood that. I never understood what it was like to like know what you should be doing in life. That was not a thing it was always like, oh, I could be doing this. When I was little, I was like, I'll be a dolphin trainer. And when I got a little older, like I'll make commercials. And I was just really all over the place in terms of what I wanted to do with my life. But it wasn't until I had an impact on people's lives to the extent that they expressed to me that I was like, oh, this is everything.
Yeah.
And so really, every new customer I have, I'm like, it's an opportunity to make your life just a tiny bit better. And I want to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love your passion. I love the legacy that you've created for, again, your family legacy, the things you're doing. And I hope this podcast will inspire other people to figure out what is my thing, what is my place, and you're not going to know it right away. As you said, you didn't know this at 18. You're not going to, but it's just trust in the process that you're going to get there. So, Deb, we're coming to the end of our time. Remind people of where they can find you, the website, and if people want to reach out to you, if they can reach out to you personally.
Sure. So our website is leealexanderandco.com, all spelled out, one word. And there's, a form on the page. There's an email on the page, info@leealexanderandco.com. I am on the other side of that. So they'd be reaching me. And, we're on Facebook and Instagram and all that good stuff. So, if this is something that people are looking for or know someone who could be looking for something like this, a high quality piece of very personalized memorial jewelry, that we're here and we're ready to help. But I also want to remind people like there are so many ways that you can honor your loved one, and I encourage people to like look into that world. One crazy thing I did in this after starting this company was we went to a funeral association conference, and that was bonkers. The experience was incredibly overwhelming for many, many reasons. But one thing I got to see was like all of the different ways that people can memorialize their loved one. Well, there were a lot of companies there, and there's a lot of really interesting things that can be done with ashes. Like there was somebody who did a painting with ashes. There's just whatever makes you feel a little bit of closure, a little bit of closeness, whatever that thing is, like explore it. And I completely agree with you, Brian, when you say like, trust in the process. I think I have like become somebody who I wasn't before, but I think I've become somebody who thinks like, everything maybe does happen for a reason. I'm not a particularly religious person. I'm not a particularly spiritual person. But I think my life has changed so much and so much has happened to lead me to this point to go, maybe there is more to this than I gave credit. And I don't like to say I think that I would have changed everything, if I have an opportunity to go back and save him and, but I also wonder what kind of person I would be. Where would I be in life? I wouldn't have found this. I wouldn't feel, so, full, I guess. And so there's like there is a silver lining, that I do believe people can find if they can think about like how how they can change, how they can live their lives in honor of their loved one in a way that their loved one would have appreciated, or that recognizes the oh man, what is the word I'm looking for? That recognizes how fragile life is.
Yeah.
And so how necessary it is to be grateful for every moment that you have and every experience you have with your loved ones, and to take your opportunities. Like, don't put things off. Don't, just work all of the time and think I'll have fun later. Like, nope. Spend as much time as you can with your loved ones, and tell them how you feel. Tell them that you love them.
Yeah.
I think that those changes in me are amazing. I'm so thankful for that. And it really actually helped me deal with the idea that like things could change in an instant, because I think I wouldn't be somebody who goes, I wouldn't regret anything. I wouldn't feel like I regret the last conversation we had, because in our last conversation, even if it was a tumultuous one, I would have finished it with like, well, I love you.
Yeah. Well, I think I am a person to believe that things happen for a reason, and I look at people's. I get to hear your life condensed into a 1-hour interview, so I get to see this overarching arc of your life, and I get to do this a lot. So I see how things kind of come together, and I think the older we get, the more we can appreciate that as we look back. So yeah, the lessons that you've learned, the choices that you made. Your family was very intentional about getting therapy and getting help and telling each other you loved it, and doing the EMD and all. It's work. I mean, you did the work, but now you're reaping the reward. So it's a beautiful thing to observe.
Thank you. Yep. I really just want people who are going through this to know, like, it's just not always going to hurt this much. Be kind to yourself, and definitely get help if you need help. And most people need help in this situation. We are not automatically built to navigate something like this. And it's okay to find the right help. Not everyone is the right help. And I am somebody who experienced that too. That was like, maybe I can't be helped. But it really was like the person that I was going to at the time. And so, give yourself grace, give yourself time, expect the unexpected, realize that like grief pops up in every area. Like one of my best friends got married a few years ago, and I think it was like around like 2017 or 18 or something. And his sister gave a speech, and I cried my eyes out, because all I could think about was that Lee wouldn't be giving a speech at my wedding.
Yeah.
And my friends must have been like, what's happening? Why is she inconsolably crying right now at this reception? And I didn't realize, again, like how far in the future I could be impacted at any time. But I just think it's important, like, just remind yourself, you've maybe never been through this before. And even if you have been through it before, it's different. It's different every time. And you just don't know. And so give yourself grace, give yourself, be patient with yourself, and know that it will get better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Deb, that's, I think, a great way for us to end this afternoon. Thanks for spending your time with me. Thanks for sharing Lee and your company and the things that you're doing. So I encourage people to go check out the website and reach out to Deb if you have any questions.
Thanks so much, Brian. Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing this wonderful work.
All right. Have a great afternoon. Hey there, if you liked this episode, come on over and talk about it. Let me know what you liked. If you didn't like this episode, come on over and talk about it. Let me know what you didn't like. Go to grieftogrowth.com/community and look for Talk About the Podcast. I'll see you there.